Welcome to my podcast. Today I'll be talking about buyers and sellers during the NHL Trade Deadline and leading scorers in the NBA. Buyers and sellers during the NHL Trade Deadline. Buyers during the NHL Trade Deadline. Boston Bruins. The Boston Bruins sit at the top of the Atlantic Division right now, but they could still improve their team. Their biggest need right now is the second-line right winger. Currently, the Bruins are playing Carson Kuhlman as their second-line right winger, but I think they need a veteran playing there come playoff time. The best right wingers on the market right now are Kyle Palmieri of the New Jersey Devils and Craig Smith of the Nashville Predators. Adding players like Palmieri or Craig Smith at the deadline would make the Bruins a favorite to win it all. Toronto Maple Leafs. With the Toronto Maple Leafs defensemen dropping like flies, Toronto will most definitely be looking for a top 4 defenseman at the deadline. The defenseman the Leafs should go hard after is Matt Dumba. He has 3 years left on a deal that will pay him $6 million per season after this season. To get a player like Matt Dumba, the Leafs need to be prepared to part with defensive prospects such as Timothy Liljegren, a young forward like Kasperi Kapanen or Alex Kerfoot, and a future first-round pick. Adding Matt Dumba would solidify their defensive core and make the Leafs a legit threat in the Eastern Conference. Columbus Blue Jackets. The Columbus Blue Jackets are playing tremendous hockey right now thanks to their tight defensive structure and the miraculous goaltending of Elvis Merzlikins. However, if the Blue Jackets want to make a deep playoff run, I think they need to add some pieces to bolster the roster. Players the Blue Jackets should target are Mikael Granlund of the Nashville Predators, who will add some offensive punch to the lineup. Another player the Blue Jackets could target is JG Pageau of the Ottawa Senators, who would add some much needed depth at center. The Blue Jackets have enough cap room to add both these players, but if they aren't able to add both these players, I think either of these players would be great additions. Colorado Avalanche. The Colorado Avalanche are just a few pieces away from being a legit contender. With the injury to Nazem Kadri, I expect the Avalanche to be active during the deadline. The players the Avalanche should target are Tyler Toffoli of the LA Kings and Chris Tierney of the Ottawa Senators. Chris Tierney is a player that can be a second-line center, but is a better fit as a third-line center. Tyler Toffoli could play on the line with Nathan MacKinnon and Gabriel Landeskog, which would allow the Avalanche the freedom to play Rantanen on a separate line. Adding Tierney and Toffoli would instantly make the Avalanche a favorite in the Western Conference. Edmonton Oilers. With Connor McDavid out 2 to 3 weeks, the Edmonton Oilers have to make a move to add some offensive firepower to the team. The player the Oilers should target is Thomas Tatar of the Montreal Canadiens, who is having a great season. Tatar would give the Oilers another primary offensive weapon while McDavid is out, and would be a great secondary scorer when McDavid returns. If the Oilers can't get Tatar, they should go after his teammate in Montreal, Ilya Kovalchuk, who has proven he is still an effective player if he plays with the right players. Adding a player like Tatar or Kovalchuk would give the Oilers a much-needed boost in secondary scoring. Check out my other podcasts at soundcloud.com/HockeyWiz777. Sellers during the NHL Trade Deadline. Ottawa Senators. The Ottawa Senators will be the biggest sellers at the deadline. They have a few players that could be very valuable to a contending team. JG Pageau, Chris Tierney, and Anthony Duclair are 3 players whose name pop up constantly in trade talks, so they should be the most sought after. Since the Senators are a rebuilding team, and neither of these players seem to be a part of the long-term plan, it would be wise to move them at the deadline. New Jersey Devils. The New Jersey Devils are most likely going to be a lottery team once again, so it makes sense to trade away some of their expiring contracts. The most noteworthy of those players for the Devils is Sami Vatanen, who is going to be highly coveted by contending teams. Besides Vatanen, contenders would also love to add players such as Blake Coleman or Wayne Simmons, who can both be great role players on contending teams. Kyle Palmieri is not an expiring contract, but if the Devils get a great package for him, it would be hard to say no. The only players the Devils aren't trading are Nico Hischier, Jack Hughes, and Mackenzie Blackwood. Everyone else could be moved. Minnesota Wild. The Minnesota Wild have already traded Jason Zucker to the Pittsburgh Penguins in a blockbuster deal, and there will surely be more deals out of Minnesota before the deadline is over. Some players the Wild will be looking to move are Eric Staal, Alex Galchenyuk, Marcus Foligno, and Brad Hunt. Matt Dumba is another player who has been rumored to be on the move, but it would take a whole lot for the Wild to trade him. There are no untouchables on this current roster for the Minnesota Wild. Chicago Blackhawks. The Chicago Blackhawks are a bubble team right now, but I think it would be wise for them to be a seller, so they could build a better team for the future. The top players on the trade block for the Blackhawks are Brandon Saad, Eric Gustafsson, and both goalies Corey Crawford and Robin Lehner. While I don't expect both goalies for the Blackhawks to be traded, I do expect one of them to be dealt at the deadline. Brandon Saad would be a nice fit on a team like the Bruins or Blues, while Gustafsson could be a great depth defenseman on any playoff team. It would be wise for the Blackhawks to move any pending UFA so they don't lose them for nothing. Montreal Canadiens. The Montreal Canadiens aren't likely to make the playoffs this year, so they should be sellers at the deadline. Right now, their most valuable trade assets are Thomas Tatar and Jeff Petrie, but Ilya Kovalchuk is also an attractive player for a contender. Even though both Tatar and Petrie aren't on expiring contracts, they will both be on the wrong side of 30 when they are due for new contracts, so it would be best for the Canadiens to trade them now. Trading both Tatar and Petrie would also give the Canadiens a greater chance at landing Alexis Lafreniere with the number 1 pick in the 2020 draft. Check out my fantasy sports blog at HockeyWizTalksFantasy.blogspot.com. Check out my Facebook page at MrHockeyWiz777 and my Instagram MrHockeyWiz77. NBA scoring leaders. James Harden leads the NBA with 35.2 points per game. Giannis Antetokounmpo is second with 30 points per game. Damian Lillard with 29.9 points per game. Trae Young with 29.7 points per game. And Bradley Beal is fifth with 29.1 points per game. Andre Drummond leads the NBA in rebounds per game with 15.8. Rudy Gobert is second in the NBA in rebounds per game with 14.5, followed by Hassan Whiteside with 14.1, Clint Capella with 13.8, and Giannis Antetokounmpo with 13.5. LeBron James leads the NBA in assists per game with 10.7. Trae Young is second in assists per game with 9.1. Followed by Luka Doncic with 8.7, Ricky Rubio with 8.6, and Ben Simmons, who averages 8.3 assists per game. Hassan Whiteside leads the NBA in blocks per game with 3.1. Brook Lopez ranks second with 2.6 blocks. Anthony Davis with 2.4. Rudy Gobert is next with 1.9, and Miles Turner also has 1.9 blocks per game. Ben Simmons ranks first in the NBA in steals per game with 2.2. Chris Dunn is second with 2 steals a game, followed by Andre Drummond with 2 steals a game, Fred VanVleet with 1.9 steals per game, and Kawhi Leonard also has 1.9 steals per game. James Harden leads the NBA in three-pointers made with 227, followed by Damian Lillard with 210. Next is Buddy Hield, who has 203. Devontae Graham and Duncan Robinson are tied with 185. On my next podcast, I talk about the NBA All-Star Game rosters and skills competition.